first thing we're going to cover is the anatomical structure. So you understand like how the heck this thing works, like what is even a skull and why is it the way it is. So we'll talk about the skeletal structure, the musculature of it. Then we'll get into doing it in terms of drawing. Okay, so shape construction, we're going to start first with two-dimensional, which is just flat shapes, circles, squares, triangles, just as they are on a piece of paper. And then we're going to translate that information, as I often do, from two-dimensional to three-dimensional, which is then a circle becomes a sphere, square becomes a cube, a rectangle becomes a cylinder. So that translation of information is really key for you in understanding how to take that information of the anatomy and translate that into something that you can draw in a believable way. Okay, then we're going to take that information, we're going to focus on the features of the face. We'll talk about how to differentiate ages in the face, babies, kids, young adults, adults, and elders. We'll talk about the triangle of likeness, and that's when we transition from doing realistic to caricaturing and why the triangle of likeness is so importante. We'll get into exaggeration and caricature and why and what to look for when you're caricaturing the shapes of the face. And then you have an exercise. Now, this is a workshop. This is not a class where you're going to be turning in work. We won't be looking at it, but we're going to ask something really fun of you to do. And hopefully you guys can do that too. And that's a self-portrait, a realistic version of you, and a caricature of yourself. Okay, so that's what today is going to be about. All right, here we go. Oh my God, I'm shaking. Here we go. Okay, so let's start off with the skeletal structure. So this is the skull. You all know what a skull looks like, but we're going to talk about the different parts of the skull. Okay, so you got your frontal bone. That's the big part of the front of your head that protects your brain all the way around. The superciliary ridge is your brow bone, and that is the most prominent part of your forehead, and that is actually the round part, like right. And you guys, I always ask my students to kind of do this with me, to kind of feel your face and feel along, because the more you are interacting with this information, the deeper that the knowledge goes into your brain, and the more likely it is you'll be able to retain that information. So we all have different styles of learning. People are auditory, people are verbal, people are visual. So when we put all of that information in different ways, it allows that information to be retained a little bit deeper. So if I say like, ooh, touch your face, then please touch your face. So you're gonna touch your superciliary ridge, which is your brow bone. And I want you to feel around how far or just how deep it is. Now, and when you go right below that, I want you to kind of feel very softly where that kind of starts to stop, where it stops, and it gets a little soft. Okay, so where that starts to stop, where it's a little soft, that's your orbit, your eye socket, and that is where the sphere of your orb is placed. Okay, so right here at the front is your nasal bone, and this is a really key part in understanding how to draw the head, because it's kind of the keystone. It's the center of the head. Right here, it's your symmetrical line, and it also is the center of the pretty much like where you're going to be measuring out all of your features. So that's a really important part too. Okay, so you have that big triangle where that cartilage of your nose is. Okay, so that's the soft part. But along the bottom of your orbit, or your eye socket, is the zygomatic bone, and that's your cheekbone. And you may have seen people with really strong, prominent cheekbones, and that's your zygomatic bone. Okay, now right on top of that is your maxilla. And that is where your teeth are. And then underneath this is your mandible. And this is your mental protuberance. Okay. Now the mental, I don't know why it's called that. I won't get into the names or why they're called anything, but the mental protuberance is an important landmark on your face, because it protubes out. It's a process. It comes out a little bit, but that is also that little bump in your chin. Okay. Now some people have more prominent mental protuberances and some people don't. But
could you say that again even faster?
Some people have wait, what did I say? Some people have more prominent mental protuberances. Okay.
Flawless.
Yeah, well, wasn't really, but that's okay. Thank you for having fun with me. So got a couple people letting in. Caleb, if you can keep your eye on the waiting room. That'd be awesome. Okay, so as with everything, okay, anatomy for figure drawing, a top figure drawing for over a decade at Laguna College of Art and Design, which is where I met my good friend Caleb here. But now he teaches with us here at Studios. Okay, so anyway, as with anything, when you're learning anatomy, okay, it's based on the ideal proportions or an average proportion, and it is always going to vary from person to person, okay, from sex to person, size, age, everything else. So these are ideal. This is your ideal cranium skull. It's not everybody's skull, it's the ideal. So when we go over the measurements are based on average proportions, not your individual proportions or anyone else's. So what your job as an artist is to understand what the ideal average is so that you can then look for the variances and how whoever you're drawing differs from that average, okay? So that's the front of the head. Now we're going to go into the profile real quick, okay? So from the side, now I want you to notice something from the side. You can still see a lot of these things. The frontal bone, the temporal bone is actually right here on the side of your head. And then the zygomatic arch comes all the way back, okay? All the way back right to your ear, okay? You can still see the nasal bone and the maxilla of the mandible, and you can see the mental protuberance kind of coming out a little bit more. But the two things that you don't see from the front are the mastoid process and the styloid process. Now, why do you need to know those? Well, those 2 points are places where muscles attach, okay? So the mastoid and the styloid process are really important. So now we're going to go into the measurements real quick. Okay, so how do you take this information and wait a second, is that the right one? Yeah, put that there. Okay, so from the front, how do you draw a head? Now, if you're taking notes, this is the time that you want to start taking notes. But if you've drawn heads before, which you probably have, you know the basic idea is that you start with a circle. And this is why you start with a circle. The circle is the base of the cranium, okay? This is this huge shape right here, but the circle is the easiest shape to start off with because it's always the same. It's not like a rectangle where a rectangle can vary from the length or the width. A square is always a square. The 4 sides are equal and the circle is always the same. So no matter how you start off with a head, you always want to start off with a circle, and the circle is going to represent that first, that main cranium shape. And then what you want to do is you want to find the center of the circle, and the center of the circle will give you the plot point for the y-axis, which is the up and down line, and the x-axis, which is going across, okay? Now, I have never remembered the difference between the X and the Y axis. In fact, I would get this wrong all the time. And once I was doing a class with a math student and she corrected me, and I will never forget that, but I still forget it. So my tip for remembering the X axis goes across is because X crosses the forehead. Yes, X marks the spot. And then the Y, because the letter Y is very tall and long, that helps me to remember that the y-axis is going up and down. Now, do you need to remember X and Y? No, you don't. You really don't. What you really need to remember is where those lines are placed, okay? The x-axis is the center, and where that basically meets is at the brow ridge, the top of the brow ridge, and the y-axis goes down, okay? Now, what you're gonna do next is you're going to take the measurement, lower this, okay. There you go. We're going to take that measurement from the halfway point, of the center of the circle to the bottom of the circle, and we're going to use that measurement. We're going to add that to the bottom of the circle, and that will give you the length of the head, okay? So then what you end up having is 3 equal parts, okay? Okay, 3 equal parts, 1, 2, 3, and then that distance will give you the entire length of the head. Now, when you divide the length of the head in half, that gives you the eye line, okay? And the eye line is where you place your eyes, obviously. Now, how big do the eyes need to be? Roughly 1/5 the width of the head, okay? And this is something that I see a lot of beginner artists do, is that they make the eyes really big and then they don't pay attention to the distance between the 2 eyes. So if you remember that the distance between the 2 eyes is literally the length of an eye, you'll get it right all the time. But you also have to make sure that you have the same distance on either side of the head, okay? Now, the nose line lines up with the, the nose line lines up with the base of the circle, okay? So you've got your brow line, which is your x-axis up here. Your y-axis going down, that's creating your center line. The base of the circle is your nose line. And then you've added that 1/3 dimension or that 1/3 measurement down here. 1/3 is we're dividing a lot with 1/2 and 1/3. So the 1/3 measurement we're going to use again on the bottom part of the jaw. And by going 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, you're basically just putting two lines with equal spaces between them. And that will give you roughly the placement of the center of the mouth, okay? So the top lip goes above that 1/3 line, the bottom lip goes below that 1/3 line, and this line right here, the bottom third, is basically the division between your mental protuberance and your mouth, okay, your lower lip. So that is why we called out the mental protuberance in the profile, okay? So now we're going to look at the measurements for the side of the head. Now, Sarah Steinberg said, I need help, 411 or no, 911 on the profile. I know a lot of people have problems with the profile, and the problem is the lack of mass in the back of the head. I always say the brain space. You need that brain space in the back of the head. How do you figure out how big that is? Okay, so from the front, we measure that circle. Okay, so when we're drawing the side of the head, we still can draw that circle. Okay, but then what we have to do is we have to add 1/3 of that circle. Okay, so we're measuring 1/3. So we take this circle, we divide it into thirds. We take that extra mass and we plop it on the back, and there is your brain space. Okay, magic. So if you can draw the front of the head, you can draw the side of the head, the profile view, all right? And the same thing applies from the front. You have the third, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 gives you the length of the face. Halfway line gives you the placement of the eye, okay? Are we all good? Any questions?
May I reiterate that real quick?
Yes, please.
So from the front view, what Larissa said is exactly right. It's a circle from the front, and from the side view, it's an ellipse. So basically, just remember, it's kind of like an egg shape. It's not a perfect circle all the way around. And this is something that Larissa and I see a lot in students, is they tend to make things a little too supersymmetrical all the way around. They try to make it too circular because, you know, they see it in a cartoon, they see it in a Pixar movie. But typically the brain is longer than it is wide. So you want to make sure that you make it an egg, more or less, an ellipse with a circle cross section from the front.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, definitely an ellipse. But the thing about the ellipse is, how big is an ellipse? Is it a big fat ellipse? Is it a small ellipse? And that's unmeasurable. That's kind of a really abstract concept. So that's why starting with a circle is really important, because that's a symmetrical shape. You can measure it. You can definitely get 1/3 measurement from that. You take that measurement and you add that to the back, and voila, you have the length of your ellipse. And now you know how tall it should be, and now you know how long it should be. Okay, moving on.
Great measurements.
Woo! I'm sorry, I'm so excited because that took me a lot of work to put together. All right, so now we're going to cover the musculature. And the musculature, I actually have this really fun program that I downloaded the other day. I usually use a program called Visible Body, but I don't have access to that. So what we're going to do really quick is I'm going to, hopefully I can switch my screen, and hopefully this works. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to, and this is, you can actually get this if you have Windows. Actually, you can probably get this for free. There are a lot of musculature apps, skeletal structure apps that you can access that are free, that are really helpful. This is kind of wonky. It's not my favorite, but it will do in a pinch. So what we're going to do real quick is we can just point to these, and it'll tell us what these muscles are. So the frontalis muscle. Okay, so the frontalis muscle, what this does is it does this, you know, just raise your eyebrows. The orbicularis oculi is the muscle responsible for squinting your eye and closing your eye. Okay, and we have this right here, which is the like I don't know if that's the angry muscle. I would call that the angry muscle, but we have the nasalis muscle, and I'm moving my face around when I'm touching these. Now, these are the muscles that are really important around here because these muscles are really responsible for talking, chewing, eating, and expression. See if I can kind of zoom in a little bit more. Zygomaticus minor, major. You don't need to know these muscle names at all, but what you do need to know is where they are at and how they affect the facial expressions. All right. This one is, I think, the levator labii superioris. I would call this the disgust muscle. You think, Caleb? You know, and I can only or the L. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm pulling a face using my disgust muscle.
Oh, okay. I can only do one side. I can't do both sides. And that's the Elvis Presley muscle.
Quick pause.
Yeah.
Question from Gia. What is the name of this app again? Visible Body?
No, this is not visible body. This is anatomy.
Anatomy.
It's a free 3D anatomy program.
I'll look it up. Not to worry. I'll find it and I'll put it in chat.
Yeah, and then also, by the way, just so you know, we'll be providing you the slides and then links to the resources that we talk about in class too. Okay. All right, so that's what all this is. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to show this today is not just for the face muscles, but for the neck muscles. Okay, so we've got the orbicularis oris, and this is the orbicularis oculi. So the oculi is for the eye, the oris is for the mouth. And then you've got these lower muscles down here. But what I want to show you is this muscle here. I'm going to get rid of this one. This is the platysma. This is a very superficial muscle. It covers underneath your jaw, and it goes all the way down to your clavicle, that clavicle bone right there. And it covers everything off. But also, it's when you do this and you stretching your you can actually try to engage it, and you'll feel it tense up in what it does. But I'm going to remove this muscle here, and I'm going to show you this muscle here. Now, this muscle is an important muscle because when people are doing portraits, a lot of times they'll be really focused, hyper focused on the head, but then they don't know what is going on with that neck at all. Now, what is really important to remember with the neck is that we have this muscle here. Let me see if I can turn it. Okay, so remember how we had said before that there is a mastoid process back here. That's the temporal lobe, but back here is the mastoid process. And this is the sternocleidomastoid muscle, which goes all the way around. It goes from the back of the neck, and it comes all the way around to the front. And it has a division in the front, and it's called the sternocleidomastoid because it touches the sternum right here, and it touches the clavicle right here, okay? And it curves around. And that muscle right here, when a muscle engages, what it's doing is it's pulling its strings closer. So when this muscle works, then the head moves this way. When the sternocleidomastoid muscle works over here, it's pulling the head that way. So those are the muscles that are responsible for the back and forth movement of the head. Now, I think that was all I wanted to show with that. Okay, any questions? No? Oh, here's another question I did want to, is there a question?
I don't believe so.
Okay, cool. One other thing that's really important in the musculature of the head is the muscles on the back, and that's the trapezius muscle. Let me get this over here. Okay, so the trapezius muscle is the main triangular muscle on the back, and it goes all the way from the scapula all the way down the spine, like a triangle shape, and then to the base of the cranium. And it is what gives the shape of the neck in the back. And you can see when I tilt it down here, you have this huge opening right here. Okay, so you have this muscle here, the platysma muscle, and then you have the trapezius muscle on the back. And that muscle right there is what creates that back of the neck or the shoulder. Now, the more prominent that trapezius muscle is, like in bodybuilders or guys that work out really, anybody that is developing, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said guys, anybody who is developing that muscle in the back, it's really big. What happens when that muscle gets really big is it gets when it's stronger and it builds up, it gets larger. And what happens is the larger it gets, the negative space between the head and the neck starts to disappear. And then you end up with people that look like the Hulk, where there's like no neck. They look like they have no neck, but they do. The neck is here, but what's happening is it's being, you can't see it because the back muscles are so large and developed, and you end up having just a head and a, you know, these big broad shoulders. So that's what that shape, what happens with that shape in a very developed musculature on an individual. Okay, so that, let me see if I can get out of that now. That's what I wanted to show you. All right, any questions? No? How are we doing on time? Okay, 2:30, going on. All right. So let's talk about the tilt of the head. Okay, so now we're gonna look at Loomis real quick. So Loomis is great, and Andrew Loomis, Drawing the Head and Hands. This is available for free as a PDF. Somebody had posted their own copy as a PDF on Google Drive. I will supply the link to that in the show notes, class notes, or whatever. So I've taken Loomis's notes here and I've superimposed my own on top of the skeleton that I accessed. And so the thing to remember is you have to understand that the circle is the shape that you draw, and that circle is not really a circle, it's the sphere. And once you understand how to move that sphere in space, and that you can give that the x-axis and the y-axis, and we didn't talk about this yet, but the z-axis, once you understand where those lines are and how the sphere moves in space, you'll be able to draw the head from any different angle. And that's really what this class is about, is understanding not just what the head looks like and how to construct the head, but really how you can take that knowledge and use it in your own imaginative drawings, whether you're drawing characters, whether you're animating a character, animating a sequence, or whatever. That's really the key thing that we want to make sure that you're understanding. And that concept of the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis, and turning the head is really important. So in the Loomis drawing, he starts off with a sphere, he throws a nail through it, and that nail going from the top all the way down to the bottom, that is your z-axis. Okay, so you have your x-axis, which is the line that crosses that sphere. Remember, it divides that sphere in half. That is your brow line. Okay, and then the y-axis, the line that goes all the way from the top to the bottom, the long line, that's your y-axis, and that is your line of symmetry. Your line of symmetry is what divides the face into two. Okay, then what you want to be able to do is understand how that all links together. When you can turn the sphere in space and you can align the y-axis along that sphere, you'll be able to tilt the head in any direction. Now, in this one also, he has that this sphere, what happens is this, you're drawing the sphere, but you can see how there's like this knife cutting through and just like this little wedge on the side. So it is a sphere that you start off with, but you're kind of losing that mass on the side. And if I show you my skull, that it's a lot thinner, right, from in here, right? But you're still starting off with that large spherical mass. So you want to be aware of how it is thinner. The skull is actually thinner from the front, but you still are using that spherical form. Okay. And another fun thing is that if you're familiar with Iron Man, I'm sure you are, if you can kind of think of like this bottom drawing down here, it looks a lot like Iron Man. If you can draw a very simplified Iron Man as your basis for your construction, and thinking of the head and the jaw, and that will give you a really good place to start. Okay.
Can I throw something in there real fast?
Absolutely.
Larissa?
Yes.
So that slice in the middle there, those are where the temples are, basically. And the temples are very different for everybody, but they're basically in the same place as everybody has them. They're really, really important, especially using them as a way of finding landmarks. If you notice, like on that bottom row, the temple sort of intersects the front planes of the face, and where it intersects is pretty much right at the brow line. So that's kind of the end of your eyebrows. It's also the end of your cheekbones, or what did you call them?
Zygomatic arch.
There you go. Zygomatic, exactly what she just said.
Yeah.
And so really, not only is it good to sort of reduce the mass on the side of that spherical ellipse, but it's also a really useful way of establishing a landmark, especially when you start rotating that ellipse, the spherical ellipse in 3D space. So
Mhm.
it's a really good place to sort of figure out where your brows are, where the brow line is, where the nose is going to start and stop, all that kind of good stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm gonna pop in with this here too. So this is more Loomis, and you can see how he's really simplified it with just the sphere with this temporal portion cut off and that T line. That T is the x-axis and the y-axis, and then he's got these demarcations for where the zygomatic arch is, the cheekbones, and how coming down that creates that front mandible and the maxilla for the jaw. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quick so you guys can just kind of focus on my little planometric head. So the planometric head is basically, it's yeah, so this side is more is less defined and has larger planes than this side. Forgive the little drawings on it. This is what happens when you have little children that like to play in your studio. They're not little anymore, but so you can see that this center, this section here, okay, this line right here, this is that line that I think Caleb was talking about, that the line of demarcation, which then comes along to the brow ridge, and then it also kind of comes down along this this arch here, okay, and that's the zygomatic arch, which is defined in the skeletal structure and in the Loomis. Okay, and so what happens, it kind of comes all the way down to this corner of the chin. All right, so you have the chin, and then we have the jawline up here. So one of the reasons why, and I'm going to show you another planometric head, a 3D one, which you can access as well, which is fantastic. But understanding the construction of the anatomy is important, and then translating that knowledge into three-dimensional forms where you understand the planes and the surfaces, because when you can understand the surface planes, that's when you can start lighting your faces, your heads, your characters in a believable way without having reference. Okay, so that's that. Let me go ahead and back share my screen. Okay, how are we doing? 234, still going. Okay. So Loomis, know that T line so that you can move and tilt the head in any direction. And then here we have the action of the neck and what happens when you raise the head and lower the head. These are all basically just kind of exact profile, exact front. There's not a whole lot of tilt happening except for down here. But also pay attention to what's happening with the neck. And I'm going to zoom in really. Let me see if I can zoom in real quick. Okay. Okay. So zooming in, we're going to look at how these are drawn. Okay. This is the sternocleidomastoid muscle. This is the one that I just showed you at the very beginning. It goes all the way behind the ear and all the way down to the sternum and the clavicle. And another thing a lot of beginner artists don't remember is that underside of the jaw. Okay. So being aware of that plane, that surface plane under there, the head just doesn't stop at the jaw. You have to be mindful of that whole underside of the head and how that connects to the cylindrical form of the neck. And the sternocleidomastoid muscle is what creates that shape in the neck. All right. And we're going to kind of move on to head types. All right. So in terms of, did I do that? Yeah. In terms of the shape of the head, we talked about how this is the ideal structure and that it's going to vary from person to person. Obviously, you always can start off with a circle, but there's going to be variances in the way that you draw the head. And of course, we want to see variances when you're designing characters. The more variances you have in your character design, the more interesting your world of characters is going to be. So you can take these basic ideas and add to them in addition, square shape faces, wide shape faces, long, and then you're taking those basic structures and you're adding to it, and you're rearranging and you're changing things up and defining them. And that's kind of the fun thing about drawing a head once. And what I would recommend, what I did was I would try to draw just the most average, boring, basic head with those ideal proportions as much as I could. I would draw it from the front, I would draw it from the profile, and 3/4 front, which I don't think I have up here, but I do. We'll show it to you in a minute. And the more you become aware of those proportions in just the average head, the more you are able to vary them when you're doing your own, when you're studying or drawing a portrait of someone else. Okay, let's close these up. Close that up. Tilt. Okay. And let's go into Loomis. Okay. Wow, it's going pretty fast. Okay, so for drawing young adults, and older adults, okay, that's basically what this head structure is for. It's for drawing your average adult head shape, right? So it's going to change. The structure of the skull won't change as you get older, but what happens is the features on the face change, and that's where we want to be able to define the variances between, you know, an adult and an older adult. And usually what happens is with age, we have the gravity affecting the fat and the fat tissue and the skin, and so everything starts to, you know, there's movement down, there's downward movement on everything as you get older, and there's the skin starts to fold, so you have wrinkles, and a lot of times in men, the noses and ears will enlarge, so that's something to watch out for too. And then you'll get jowls, the skin from the sides of the face will kind of start to come down on top of the muscles, and that is what creates that feeling of age. Okay, let's see if I have another one. No. Okay. So when drawing babies and toddlers, the skeletal structure of a young baby, you know, that what's happening with a young child is the skull is growing. Obviously, when you're a child, you're constantly growing. But what happens in the shape, in terms of the shape of the head, a child's head is going to look way more closer to a sphere shape than an adult. Okay, and the closer to the sphere, it's kind of like it's way more rounder, and then the eyes are really large based in that in the head, because the cranium is growing, and the eyes don't really grow as much. So what you want to be mindful of is just how much mass is on the head of a baby compared to an adult. There's a lot more mass. The shape is different. And as a child gets older, what happens is that the face shape starts to get a little bit more elongated, but the features still stay in this really small area of the face. Okay, so the features are all still, you know, kind of together, but what's happening is that the shape is starting to elongate. And as the people get older, is the head still, you're still using your basic shape of your, you know, sphere and measuring those things, but what you're doing now is that the placement of the eyes is changing, and as the child gets older, the face, the head shape elongates, the features get smaller. So on a child, the features are really large, okay, on that shape of the head. And as the adult, as a person grows older, teenager to young adult to adult, the features get smaller on the head shape. Caleb, do you have anything you want to add? Because I see you're drawing or something. You're doing something.
I was indeed drawing. I was just trying to sort out different profiles using exactly the same kind of groundwork that you were using just then. Do you mind if I show my screen really fast?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
to sort of show you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just really fast.
Can you share?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So you guys can see my
Yes.
Photoshop here.
Thank you.
All right. So basically, I was taking the exact same proportions, more or less. So here's like this really fast sketched out ellipse. As you can tell, it's not particularly, you know, refined or anything like that. I just duplicated it 3 times, and then I started playing around with different placement and, you know, trying to modify it a little bit. Now, of course, some of these have the brow line is going to be a little bit different, but the idea is that everything is still more or less the same throughout. Like here's, you know, the brow line is still going to be attached to the temporal fossa there. Some people's noses are going to be, you know, more convex at the top. Some are going to be a little bit more aquiline. You know, they're going to be more concave. Um, Now here's sort of like your typical sort of Pixar face. This was all done without reference. Yes. I basically just sort of like went off of um, what Larissa was saying just a minute ago. You know, this is like, you know, here's your basic Elsa, you know, or your, you know, your Little Mermaid, your Disney face. It's neither juvenile nor adult. And then we have somebody over here who's a little bit more, I guess, more representational, a little bit more realistic, a little bit more muscular. We've got um, the you know, the musculature that connects the back of the neck or the back of the head to the clavicle. And then we've got another lady over here who's neither one nor the other. You know, we've got more aquiline nose. Uh, we've got the, you know, I haven't really even put the hairline in there yet. Could be anybody, you know, but the idea is that the proportions behind all these are more or less the same. It's more about like, or sorry, the basic underlying structure of the proportions. But when we play around with the shapes of the nose and like the placement, we can always sort of suggest way different characters with you know, and these are just, you know, all really simple profiles that you can play around with. And it's all about like establishing the distance in between the features, like from the eye to the ear, all those measurements that Larissa just showed us, painstakingly you know, measured out. You know, here's a circle. You know, if we added another third to the back there, we get the ellipse. Yeah, the angle from the eye to the ear. It's I mean, it's going to be different for everybody. For again, but these are all more or less, you know, they're a little cartoony, but the idea is to try and get you to push the shapes. You know, the shapes themselves aren't all that important. What matters is the distance in between them. This empty real estate
Empty real estate. Yep.
in between. You know, where your cheekbones are going to be placed, the space between, like here, for example, you know, we've got a um, the chin is a little bit more inverted here. This one's a little bit more pugnacious. This one's, you know, neither one nor the other, you know. And for characters that are sort of like juvenile, they have a lot of this. They have a lot of learning to do. That's great. But if you have somebody that's a little bit more three-dimensional, somebody more fully formed, maybe you want to decide, you know, what they are and what they aren't a little bit earlier on, and you can make those decisions using just these very basic, um, you know, using just these basic sculptural additions to that same identical framework.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's
don't
really
mean to blather on too much,
no, that was
as you
great.
were.
I love that. I love that. And then what I was going to show too is that how you can vary just the angle, like the jaw of your first character there is going back a little bit, whereas the middle character is kind of more straight. And you can vary whether even if it's coming forward or coming going back like you have it. And it's in that variation where you can even push the differences a little bit more too. I think that's really great.
Absolutely. Well, I don't mean to take any time away from your
Okay.
lecture here, but I'm going to continue.
You keep sketching and we'll
I will be. I will be.
catch up with you in a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing your screen
My
and go back. Okay, share screen. All right, how are we doing on time? Okay. All right, so really quick, before I get too deep into that, I want to hit on the features, because the features are what we were talking about with how to change the variation of your characters. Oh, there we go. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about are the eyes. So the eyes are an orb, a spherical orb inside the orbit bone of your skull. And the thing to remember is that it is a sphere, and it is inside of your, it's behind your eyelids. So what you want to remember is that when you're drawing the eye, okay, think of a sphere, and the eyelids that cover the eye, kind of like a knight, like a knight's helmet, how it kind of comes down and opens up. I don't know. What do you think, Caleb?
Like a visor. Yeah, exactly.
Like a visor. Yeah, that's right. And so if you can think of it like that visor, and that the eyelid comes around, it has a thickness on the top and it has a thickness on the bottom, and that wraps around all the way to the other side. That's going to help when you're drawing the head, the eye. Okay, and then here we go with the distance between the eyes is 1 eye length apart. And when you're drawing them, you want to make sure that you're really, what you're doing is you're really mindful of how this shape is really a sphere. It's really much bigger than the eye is what we're actually seeing, okay? Because we have the eyelid covering up the eye. But what we have then here is we have the tear duct, and then we have this kind of angle that comes up here. And so this here becomes a lot more, this is a little bit more pink. It comes in around like this. So you have, like, you never want to draw an eye like this, okay? This is no, this is bad. So what you're doing is you're creating that tear duct, you're creating this eye shape here, and it looks more like this, where, and it's always going to basically depend on the person. But what happens is usually there's, I don't even like saying usually because everybody is different, but it's more of an arch over here, and then it's rounded at the bottom. Now, depending on the direction of where your eye is looking, okay, this high point in this eyelid is going to change, because the eye, the surface of the cornea is raised. All right, so it actually comes it comes like out like this, and then it goes around, it comes out, and then it comes down. So that cornea is raised a little bit. So when you're looking, when an eye is looking in one direction, what's going to happen is the highest point of that eyelid is going to be right over the cornea, which is also the pupil and the iris. Okay, you can see that over here, it gets a little higher over there. And okay, and then when you're drawing the light inside of the eye, what you want to be mindful of is that the iris, the color part of your eye, is actually an inverted bowl. An inverted bowl, yeah, it's an inverted bowl inside of the sphere of your eye. And your pupil, which is what dilates and allows light to come in and allows you to see, that's like the little bit, that's the little bottom of your inverted, your iris. Okay, it's like the bottom of the bowl. And then the cornea is raised above that. So what happens is when you're creating the highlight and the shadows on the eye, which everyone likes to do, what's happening is the sun or the light is coming from one direction, and as it hits the eye, the area that's closest to it is in shadow, because this is the bowl and this is it's inverted, and this is the part that's not getting hit by any light. But what's getting hit by light is the opposite side. And that's what happens down here. This is why the light is, well, you see the highlight is right here. So the light is coming from this direction. So because the light is coming from this direction, that's where the shadow is going to be. So the shadow on the iris, the direction of the light. Now, what happens with that highlight is this highlight, because this is a raised surface, that's catching the light on that side, but it's clear. That cornea is clear. So you can't see that it's raised, but that light, that highlight is right on top of the darkest part of the iris. So that's usually what you'll see if the light is coming into your character, your person's or your portrait person's face, is that the shadow will be right behind the highlight, unless the light is coming directly in front of, okay? So that's a real fun one. When I was drawing Avatar, the Avatar eye is like, literally, it's like, it's this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and then you do this. This is the Avatar eye. Yep. Okay, and it's really simplified, but it's based on that idea. Okay, now expressions. Okay, so when a person is at ease, what's usually going to happen is that the orb, sorry, not the orb, but the iris is going to be just kind of right hugging that top lid. Okay, just hugging right at the top. It's just like right at the top, and then just like a little rainbow right there. Okay, so this is where we're going to be paying attention to the whites of the eye. When you're alert or you're surprised, what happens is the eyelid pulls up. You have the orbicularis oris that pulls up, and the orbicularis oris on the bottom pulls down. Actually, it goes the other way. It pulls down, and that pulls up. And what is happening when you are surprised is you are shocked. Like, you cannot believe what you're seeing. So literally, you can't believe what you're seeing. So your eyes, the emotional reaction is your eyes open up to get more information so that your eyes can try to take in as much information as possible. When you're sleepy, what happens? Some of you may be sleepy right now, is the eyelids kind of come down and you get this halfway point, and you get this emoji kind of thing where, you know, it's just this little dots like this right here. Okay, so the halfway point, when the eyelids cover, you know, more halfway or more of the iris, that's the sleepy look. Or, you know, like this isn't everyone, where maybe a person's natural at ease state is that their eyelids cover more of their iris than someone else. Other people have the opposite, where their eyelids are actually open more. Maybe they look like their eyes are open all the time. So that's always going to vary. But in terms of expressions, that's something that you want to be aware of. Now, something that I always talk about in my my character design class is with understanding like facial reactions and emotions. If someone is smiling, you'll see it in their eyes. If someone likes you or is really attentive to what you're saying or what you're doing or who you are, their pupils are going to dilate. When your pupils dilate, you're trying to, your brain is saying, I need more information. So that's why a lot of times when you see these people that are really in love, like their eyes are so big. I put little hearts in it, but that's what is happening. It's a scientific thing that happens. So that's always a fun thing to remember. So in terms of where the orb is, the iris in your eye, that's just kind of a fun thing to do. And then there's another one in talking about eyebrows. So the eyebrows, if you construct the eyebrows with the eyes on the shape of a head, it's like kind of like a Spider-Man mask. And if you think of that mask shape, right, Caleb, if you think of that mask shape being together, then you'll always have the proper shape of the eyebrows attached to your eyes. Now, the eyebrows will usually kind of go up and arch at the highest point over here. It's the highest point. No, I'm wanting the brush. Where's my brush? The highest point over here. Okay, and usually when you're drawing the hair comes out in this direction, this outward direction. And depending on if your eyebrows are on fleek or not, it depends on how well they are going out in that direction. But using that mask shape will help you when you're creating the expressions of your characters. Oh, autosave. Okay, so if we draw this mask here, here, and draw this here.
While Larissa is drawing that, remember when you're doing expressions, especially eye expressions, remember to try and keep things asymmetrical. There's always going to be, whenever people are reacting to something, they tend to either pull back like this and there's a bias to it, or they pull in and there's a bias to that. They always lead with either one side of the face or the other. And typically when they do that, one eyebrow goes up, the other one goes down. Or if they're like, a spider, both of them will go up, and there tends to be like a little bit of an arch to the overall eyebrow shape as well. Or if they're looking down past their cheeks, like, I will kill you, that sort of thing. Typically, there tends to be like some of the eye gets exactly like what Levis is doing. There tends to be a little bit of occlusion at the bottom, in which case we sort of they're looking past their cheeks or like over them, like they were a little bit of a hill. Always remember that one of the keys to successful expressions, and this is something that I've been teaching for a long, long time, and I know that Larissa's been doing the same, is asymmetry. So try and keep that in mind, especially when you're starting to add expressions to your own characters.
That's good. That's a good thing to remember. Asymmetry always makes your characters way more interesting, for sure. Okay, so when you're taking that mask, that eyebrow mask, you can add that to the shape, the construction shape of your face from the front view, from the 3/4 front, from the profile. And when you're doing a 3/4 front view, like this one down here, it's important to remember that what happens with the shape of the eye, we have the eyebrow ridge coming up. We're going to talk about the nose in just a second, but you're still going to have the shape of the eye back here, and we have that nasal bone, which is covering that up. Okay, so the distance is still, you're still mindful of the distance. You don't want that to get too close. Okay. So you're going to be mindful of that shape and this nasal bone right there when you're drawing the 3/4 front view. Okay. Any questions? No? Anything? I know. Okay, good. We're going to move on to the nose. Okay. So the nose. The eye is always super easy to draw because it's delineated by edges. You have the hard edges of the eyelids. You have the hard edges of the eye, where the eyelids fold. You have the hard edges of the iris and the pupil. All of these things, the eyelashes, all of these are really easy to see because they're hard lines and they're defined. But why is the nose so hard? Because you have the edges of the nostril, you have the nostrils themselves, but everything else is kind of this amorphous, abstract, like non-hard thing. So it's all form, right? So what we want to understand is what the form of the nose is. And essentially what it is basically it's just, think of large shapes. It's a large sphere. It's a large, it's a large sphere with two smaller spheres. Okay. And there is a wedge between that, which takes it up to the nasal bone, right? And that has definition, okay? There's a top plane and there is a side plane that connects to those three ball forms, right? Now, that's going to depend, obviously, on the person you are. Now, maybe some of you have more prominent nose bridge. Maybe some of you have a very smaller nose bridge. Maybe it's very large and wide. Maybe it's really small and narrow. So the idea is that you're just remembering that there are three. Uh-oh, my internet and connection is unstable. Let me know if you, Caleb, let me know if I pop off. And if I pop off, Caleb's going to take over. That's usually what happens right before I pop off. It says internet connection unstable, and then I'm standing here screaming. Nobody can me.
Oh, we do have
right.
a couple questions here.
Yes.
Is this a good time, or should we wait till?
Yeah, go ahead. Nope, go ahead. Do it.
Okay, so any tips for drawing semi-realistic noses, and how do you avoid making your nose look snoutish or like a pig?
Semi-realistic noses. Well, the idea of drawing a semi-realistic nose is to study as many noses that you can and draw them in with line and form. Okay, and this is gonna be part of your exercise at the end of this class. You'll be focusing on your own nose, hopefully. But the idea is that just like with caricaturing and character design, understanding what those basic forms are, the large sphere and the two smaller spheres and the wedge bridge of the nose, varying that in their relationship to each other. Okay, so like here, I've done a few already here, but the placement of these is going to change depending on you know, the individual. You have, this is more of a wider, or sorry, a thinner, taller nostril, ball of the nose here. Here we have the ball of the nose, but then the nostrils are a little higher up. Okay, here you have a more wider nose, and the nostrils on the side are longer, or I'm sorry, more squashed. So it's basically, you're just taking these two shapes and you're varying them. Okay. Okay. And you're thinking of this in terms of a flat shape, two-dimensional shape, just circles. Then, because we always go flat first, and then we translate that into 3D shapes, then you're thinking, okay, well, how large is this? Is this really prominent? Is this coming out? Or is it really flat? Okay, and I like to use lines like this to cross contour my form, because it helps define the surface plane. Okay, and because I've drawn myself so many times, I always end up drawing my nose, but I try to draw other people's noses. But you want to think of the connection between these two forms here, and the nostril coming into there. Now, if you're trying to not draw a puggish nose like this, what happens is you'll be drawing nostrils where this base of the nose is really low and the nostrils are up really high, and you can see the bottom surface of the nostrils, and that will always change depending on who you are drawing. And what I often will do is I will kind of take this, like kind of a shadow, a core shadow. This looks like an owl. Because what's going to happen is usually, and I'll show you this in the lighting section, is that the bottom of the nose is facing down. The bottom nose is facing down. So if you go with light logic, that anything facing up is facing the light, and anything facing down is going to be in dark, then the bottom, these are the places that you're going to have things in shadow. The bottom of the nose, the bottom of the top lip, didn't even cover this in the mouth, underneath the bottom of the bottom lip, and then underneath the chin. Okay, so that is an area that will always usually be in shadow if the light is coming up from above. So in terms of drawing realistic noses, think of the form, look for these forms in photo references that you're looking at. And when you draw them, you want to try to draw them with the form first as much as you can. And then when you're rendering, and when you render, I always ask my students to try not to render with tone, because when you're rendering with tone, what that does is, at least in terms of coming from an animation point of view, it doesn't necessarily help you to understand the direction of the surface plane. It's just showing whether something is light or whether something is dark, but it's not really telling you the direction of the surface plane, or what's happening. So by these lines that I've drawn here, these lines that I've drawn here, because I've drawn these lines coming down in this direction, what this doing is twofold. It's creating tone, but it's also showing the direction of the form. So you know that the form is coming down in this direction, okay? Just like these lines are cross contouring, kind of going around the form like this, okay? And that helps to the form, I think, in any way. And so if you think of this nostril as just wedge shape, plus these smaller spheres of the nostrils and a larger sphere of the bulb of the nose, that's a really simple way to remember how to draw the nose. Okay, we're at 306. Let's keep going. Okay, so the mouth. All right. So really simplified way for drawing the mouth, okay, is, oh, let me go on that layer here. Okay, I've got a little letter M right here. And it's going to vary from person to person. We have a little M, or it looks like a little bird. Okay, that creates that divot at the top of the lip. Now, then we have another letter M, squashed letter M, and that's the division of the top lip and the bottom lip. And then you have 3 curved lines, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and that's just kind of a really stylistic, simplified way of drawing the mouth. Now, is it everybody's mouth? Absolutely not, because everybody's mouth is different. But what we can look at is the 4 forms that make up the lips. Okay, so depending on if you have full lips or thin lips, you're still going to have some kind of variation of this, but you have this center portion here, okay, which is kind of rounded, and this is what gives this division here. Okay, it's a little bit rounded, it's protruding, protruding and it's coming out, and this is more of a rounded form. Now you have the side of the top lip, and those are curved, or I'm curving it like this. Those are separate planes. So if you think of the top lip as having 3 surface planes, okay, depending on the person, it's all going to change or vary. And because that is facing down, let me get my pastel. Because it's facing down, it's often going to be darker than the bottom lip. Now, the bottom lip is more of a spherical, like, yeah, elliptical spherical form, more rounded. And what usually happens, now depending on if you're wearing lipstick or lip gloss or whatever, you're going to have a highlight that comes on this bottom portion of the lip. But even if you aren't wearing anything on your lips, what's usually going to happen is this bottom portion is going to be, it's going to be lighter here because it's facing upward, it's facing the light. Okay, and so we'll have a little bit of shadow underneath this portion here. We'll have a little bit of shadow usually in the corners of the mouth, around here, shadows around here, and then depending on how full the lips are, right? Shadows on the bottom of the lip. Okay, now remember we talked about the third measurements. Let me see if I can find that. I'm afraid if I find it, I'm not gonna be able to come back to my place, but that third mark we had on the, just draw it real quick. Okay, so we had our circle, head, right? We had this to here. We have this. Okay, you should be able to draw the proportions of the head that quickly. Okay, so this is the mouth line here. Remember, we have this lip line here, this lip line here, and then this down here, that's the division between the bottom of the mouth and the mental protuberance. So that would be roughly right here. And then what I usually will do is I will, oops, let me switch. I will kind of draw that into more of like a, just the way that I've molded or modeled, excuse me, the top lip as a spherical form. I'll think of the chin as a rounded form too, remember, because that is protruding from the skeleton, the skeletal structure. Okay, so what happens is you have, this is dark, this is light, and then between this bottom lip and here, you're going to have this area. That's going to be really dark too. Not really dark, but this is going to be dark. Okay, because it's coming backwards, remember? We have this bottom lip right here, and it's got this shadow part right here. That's the underside of the lip. So then we have the top surface of the chin, the mental protuberance, that's facing up. So that gets lit. That's a spherical form. And then underneath we have the shadow. And that's what helps to turn and makes the edge of the chin not look so hard and like a corner, but it helps to round it out and make it a little bit smoother and softer. Okay. All right. Now we're going to move on to ears. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on ears because, you know, they're ears. They usually get covered up by hair, or they're just kind of like, they're there. You just need to make sure that you're drawing them, you understand that what they're looking like. So let's see here. Going here. All right. So curves, they look like a question mark. Usually you have this kind of curve that comes up around and goes all the way around. I'm not using a whole lot of anatomical words here or lingo, but basically the idea, when I draw them in cartoons, I draw them super simple. It's just to see with this little curve line in here. But when you're looking at the ear, you want to notice that I always think of Caleb in your drapery class, the dead folds. What's the folds where they're just kind of, the inert folds where you have to really carefully study?
Yeah, the same thing. Inert, dead folds, same thing.
Yeah, where you have to really carefully look and study what's happening with the ear. Now, there's basic things that are happening with everybody's ear that are the same, but everybody's ears are also different. But what's usually happening also is that you have this Y, this curved Y that happens. And then you have this curved line that comes around like this. And that's pretty much what is happening. You have this kind of curved Y in here. That's like a valley or a hill. Okay, oops, let me go to my dark color here. Well, what am I on my eraser? Okay, got it. All right, let's switch to pencil. And so you have this Y between the forms here, but then you have this curvature. Let me bring that down. Curvature of the arch of the ear. And you see how I'm using these lines to curve around this line here to show that this is kind of like a cylindrical form going back into space. But if you can simplify it, basically you just have to understand what that arch is, how it curves out, and how this is simplified Y shape in here, and then just the this part around, I forget what this is called. You know what it's called, Caleb? This part here?
Not the earlobe.
This is
Yes, that is. I'm drawing a blank. It is the tragus. There you go.
there you go.
Thank you, K. Rickard, for that.
Oh, thank you, Kat. Okay, so that is the ear. All right, now the hair. Okay, so the hair, a lot of times we get really kind of stuck on the hair because it's just, there's so much of it. And we know that it's made of little individual strands, but when we draw them as little individual strands. Do not do that. Think of them as a collective mass, a collective form, and think of them as an overall shape. So when you think of them as an overall shape, you're thinking as a designer, and you're thinking shape always try to think of shape. So you're thinking of the overall silhouette. Okay, and that silhouette can vary between any, a person, whether they have straight, wavy, curly hair or whatever. But if you can think of the shape overall, and you can design that shape in an interesting way when you're designing your characters, then you can start to break it down. Okay, so treat the hair as a mass of form, large shapes first, and then what you want to do is start dividing them into sections or locks of hair. So I've got two examples here, straight and afro. So the idea at the top is that you've got your large shape, then you're starting to divide them into smaller sections like this. So let me go get my pencil here. And by dividing it into sections, now you're saying, all right, these are smaller sections of the larger masses of form, okay? And you can still stay within your overall mass. But what you want to do then is you can start adding the texture. And the texture is the texture of the hair. And what that's going to do is it's going to show you the texture of the hair. It's going to show you the, the way that you draw that in can help define the light source or where the light is coming from. So if you think of the, let's see here, Caleb, I can hear your keyboard.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Tapping away. That's good. Okay. So if you think of the light hitting, let me try this again. If you think of the light hitting an orb like this. Oops. Okay. The light hitting an orb like this. Okay. And the light would be, the highlight of that orb would be here. And this is where the shadow would be. Okay. And maybe its cast shadow is over here. Okay. And I always think of like my early Chris Hart how to draw books. Remember Chris Hart, how to draw manga, how to draw cartoon characters, how to draw animals. How many of you guys grew up on Chris Hart, right? And he's still drawing. So the idea is that you're going to be thinking of the hair because it is on your cranium, the sphere that we have started off with, and you want to be lighting the hair in that same way. But when you light the hair, you can use your lines to define the shadows, where the shadows are, okay? And this area right here would be the highlight, okay? But as this form turns, this gets a little bit darker. And what we're doing is we're twofold creating texture and we're creating form, okay? Based on how we're adding the lines to the hair, okay? So that's straight, okay? And I just have time for only 2 examples, but so I got this brilliant, beautiful afro here. And so same thing, you're looking at the overall basic shape, get the overall basic shape, and then you're starting to break that down into smaller shapes. And I apologize that this fro is not as beautiful as I would like, but I was drawing it very quickly. But you want to take those smaller shapes and clump them, not really clump them, but think of them as smaller shapes together. And it's the same idea, the same principle. This is literally a sphere. But if you think of how that the light is hitting her and where the light is coming from, that's going to help you define the texture and define the form of her hair. So the light is coming from this direction. The shadow, the core shadow would be kind of like this. So I've kind of created this core shadow on her hair. So on this underside here, and kind of like over here. So I've gone ahead and I've kind of shaded all of that in. So now I'm defining my large mass all at once, not individually yet, just the big mass all at once. And then what I'll do is go into that and start to define and start to refine, with smaller and smaller and smaller shapes, starting with large to small. So then you have smaller locks of hair, and you start to divide them up. And each of those has, let me just go in here, each of those is a form that is catching light and is casting a shadow. Just like these areas up here are catching light and casting shadows. You can see how there's shadows in between these sections of hair, and there are shadows between these sections of hair too. So what you're doing is you're thinking of lighting a sphere. You're thinking of the sphere and the light on a sphere on all objects and all locks of the hair. Okay, and so where there is shadow, where there are locks of hair that are kind of hiding other parts of the hair, then you can create those deeper occlusion shadows. Okay, and you can refine each of those locks with having a little bit of light and a little bit of shadow on top of them. And you're going to look at your reference, of course, but you don't, this is the thing, you don't want to sit there and look at your reference so much that you're copying hair by hair by hair. You want to understand what is happening in the texture of that hair and then construct that in a way that's believable, okay? So it's about taking that information, breaking it down, analyzing and seeing what is happening with this shape, if it's curly, if it's wavy, and then lighting the form with that knowledge of how to light 3-dimensional form. Does that make sense? Okay, I see some nodding heads. Caleb, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you did an amazing job. It's yeah, you don't want to get caught in detail. Like most things, we tend to be very impatient with ourselves when we're drawing art. We want to jump into detail. We want to make sure maybe we want to start with texture, or when we want to start with the little things first, the little noodly things. Don't catch yourself doing that, because it's just basically a symptom of impatience. Try and sculpt hair. You want to start with big shapes, whittle them down. And, we've got all different kinds of hair. We've got coily hair, we've got long tendrily hair, we've got hair that collects in locks or into coils or curls or waves. And what you want to do is you want to try and start with a big shape and then you want to subdivide it.
Yeah.
So figure like yeah, you want to try and sculpt it basically. Start with something big and whittle it down into individual groups. That's actually the way that a lot of 3D sculptors do it. A lot of 3D character designers do it, is they start with big shapes and then they just sort of like start collecting them into groups. And that way they can figure out what's being affected by wind, what's being affected by gravity, and it ends up looking much more realistic as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you so much for adding to that. I appreciate it. Okay, so what now? Okay, so that's basically kind of like a simplified, real quick, basic way to do the, realistic or basic drawing of the head. So we're going to get into a little bit more about quick sketching here. So, oh, let's get rid of that. Okay. Quick sketching. Okay, so as a figure drawing instructor for over a decade, that you have to be able to understand how to draw the head really quickly when you're doing gestures that are like 5 minutes long, okay? Especially in animation where you're learning and you're studying the figure so that you can use that as the basis of knowledge as your visual vocabulary, so that when you're animating later, you understand how the body and the form works. So in terms of quick sketching the head, you're basically taking that structure, the head, the proportions, the cranium, the mass of the jaw, and you're doing that really quickly, okay? And then you're also adding the features, but how do you do that in a way where you're not caught up in all the details? Well, this is where understanding what shapes are, or what shapes are used in the head and how to rotate the head is really going to help a lot in drawing a quick sketching of the head. So you can see how in these you can kind of see how there's kind of an under drawing through them. I do start off with a spherical form often, and we'll draw the guidelines for the eyes or the nose, depending on the view. Like you can definitely see this in this drawing of Erica, that the cranium is drawn. It's more of an ellipse because I see of a 3/4 rear kind of a thing. I can see her ear and a little bit, yeah, it's more of like a profile 3/4. But you can definitely see the cranium space through there, and you can see the cranium shape through here, and how I've drawn through the form over on through the bun. But a lot of times what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking, you want to start off with that shape, but you also don't want to, here's the thing, I've taught you all this stuff, now get rid of it. No, you don't want to get rid of it. You want to be mindful of it so that you can make sure that your forms, when you look for the actual shape of the head, that the actual shape of the head has structure underneath it. So you'll see in, and let's see in this drawing here, how I really just got this overall shape right here. I think I started off with this kind of shape right here, and then I really just focused on, let me get this pencil here, just this shape. Okay, and here I have this shape of her head, and it's really elongated there. Okay, here I've got this shape. I kind of started off with a shape here and wrapped around my form, and then added this jaw line there. Okay, so you're thinking in terms of these shapes, and you're adding onto them. All right, let me get rid of that. Okay. I'm going to show you my little Lady Gaga skeleton drawings that I did for my class. But basically, when you're doing figure drawing, and I'm not sure if anybody here is signed up for our drawing for animators and illustrators class. I hope you are. If you aren't, please join us. If you haven't joined us before, it's a really great class. We're going to be doing figure drawing gestures and sketching in there. But the reason why I have this slide up for this class is so that you can see how understanding that tilt of the cranium is so important in just drawing a human figure. And you can see how I have, let me go in here. I'm gonna erase it. I'm gonna do a switch. Okay. This x-axis here, the tilt, yeah, the cranium space in the back, and this line here coming down to the jaw, and then this is the z-axis. So this, because I can add this shape under here, I understand that this head is, I can see where that head shape is in space. And as these are a little wonky, but you can see how in this one here, it's more of a 3/4, or it's more of a profile. So that has a longer shape there. Okay. So these lines are really integral in understanding the tilt of your head. Okay. All right. So how to quick sketch a head. Let's do this right now. I have this page from Vilpu's drawing manual because I love it, because it shows how you're taking the torso shape and how you attach the head to the torso. A lot of times people will draw the head, but they won't know how to attach the head to the torso, right? So they got this really amazing head, but it's kind of like disconnected from the body. So thinking in terms of the connection is, it's a cylindrical form, and it's a curved cylinder that's coming out from this kind of egg shape, the simplified egg shape of the torso. And if you go here, oh, hello, somebody's unmuted. Somebody's taking pictures. That's great. I'm glad you're taking pictures. So what we want to do is we want to be looking at how we're going to take shape. We're going to quick sketch ahead here. I'll just do a couple. I'm just going to start off with some spheres. Spheres. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to draw that x-axis, which is the line that crosses. Okay, so this is going to tell me whether my head is facing up or down. Okay. That's my x-axis. Okay, now my y-axis. My y-axis is going to tell me the direction of the front of the face, right? So we're going to take that and I'm going to draw this down. And when you draw this, by the way, okay, you want to make sure that you're drawing in a sculptural way, okay? You're not just going like that. You want to, sound effects important. You want to make sure that you're like feeling how that line is crossing over that spherical form of the ball, and you want to drop that line down, okay, or bring it up. Oops, let me redraw that, sorry. Okay. No, I kind of did that one already. Let's do this. Okay, so that's the x-axis. I'm sorry, that's the y-axis. Okay. All right, so then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of think about the temporal lobe and where that temporal lobe is at. We're going to take that slice out of that cranium there, and then we're going to add the mandible. And when we add that mandible, okay, we're thinking in terms of that distance between here and here. Now, this is a depth, right? You can't literally take this dimension right here, okay, because this is what is happening is this is actually wrapping around this form, and it's going all the way down. So if it's going all the way down, maybe back here, then it's probably right here. So that would be here. And I'm going to wrap that out. I'm going to take this line now, this temporal lobe here. Remember what I showed you on the planar head. We're going to take this and draw our little Iron Man guy there. Okay. And we have a structured head. Now we're going to do the same for this one. We're going to wrap this line this way. What time are we at? 3:30. Okay, we're going to the bottom of this is probably right about there. We're going to rough it out on there. And we're going to take this measurement, kind of roughly eyeball it like this. And I'm going to take this line and drop this. This is just eyeballing it. Now, actually, if you were to put this into a box. No, that's not the right angle there. So let's try that again. Okay. Let's try that again. And then this line, let's see. This okay. And then you know what? Because I can see now I need to add cranium space to that one, and I need to add cranium space to this one because I can see a little bit of the back of the mass of the head. So I am actually going to go back and add some cranium space to that one. That makes more sense. And I'm going to add some cranium space to this one too. And I'm going to follow, let me go to this dark line. I'm going to follow this line here. And I'm going to draw the underside of this head. Okay. Oh, what about the neck? Let's talk about the neck. That's what we were on this page for, because we have the cylindrical form. Now the cylindrical form connects the cranium here, the base of the cranium, the occipital lobe. Sorry. And we want to attach that from here. And we want to think of how that's coming through the cranium on the other side. And we want to think of how the cranium is coming here on the other side too. And then that's going to attach to that on this back side here. All right, so let's keep going on all these other heads.
Can I add something while you're talking
Yes,
here?
I was going to say, you want to do something while I'm talking?
I just love the fact that you drew the underside plane to the jaw, that visor, that the Iron Man, if you will.
Yes.
It tends to drawing a character with their head lifted up tends to baffle a lot of artists, and it doesn't need to, because we all tend to know, okay, well, the jaw is sort of like this big visor shape, and we know that it comes down, but what's underneath it? And to be honest with you, if you look at the drawings that Larissa has drawn and the little sketches that I've done, it's in the most it depends on how much fat the character has on the body, or how old they are. There are a lot of different factors, but so youth can have a place into it. The health of the character, their status, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, on an average, sort of like an idealized character like the ones that Larissa's doing now, it tends to be just like a flat little shelf. Even on characters that have really sort of mesomorphic levels of body fat and musculature, they tend to just be kind of flat. But don't forget to put that in there. It's very, very seldom, unless the character is very slight. It's typically just a flat plane. Just remember that from the tip of the chin to the base of the neck, or to where it connects to the neck, it's typically almost level. Unless, of course, they are, fairly slight, or again, juvenile, or if they're very skinny, that sort of thing.
Mhm. All right, so thank you for that.
But
So
that's a really, really great example, that one with the head lifted up. That's a good way for you guys to think about approaching it.
thank you for adding that. Okay, so basically, I haven't really drawn the head. I've just drawn a construction of the head. But now you're like, okay, well, I can do that. But now, how do I get the head? How do I get the features to not be floating like a Picasso painting, so that they're structured on my head shape? So what you want to do is think of those, and we'll talk about this in caricaturing in a few minutes. But basically, you want to think of the shapes of these features as shapes on, and draw the nose shape here and the mouth. Okay, so everything's flat right now. I'm not adding anything dimensionally.
These are all just like stickers. They're
Yes,
decals.
thank you. They're just stickers. They're just stickers. Okay, like placeholders kind of a thing. Okay.
Joy had a really good question. They find the shape of the chin to be where the head is uplifted to be challenging because it's usually rounded or squared off. It really has, that's where you want to use that temporal fossa, that little slice on the side of the head. You see where that line intersects with the brow line on the middle of the ellipse of the head. If you create an arc that starts at the top of that slice at the top of the in the cranium, and you continue that down just exactly like Larissa just did, it shows you where the chin terminates. And that's basically all you need to know where, it doesn't matter where the head is pointing or, if you're doing any kind of gesture work, it'll show you where you want to have the shape of the chin and and to what it conforms. And that's basically all you. I mean, these little placeholders here are meant to be these essentially just time saving tips. So you can sort of figure out on a very basic head, but you're going to have characters that are going to belie all of this. So just make sure that you remember, there's going to be an underlying skeletal structure, and it's going to mainly conform to these. Just need to, yeah, Sarah Steinberg had it right. We just need to take pictures of ourselves with our chins uplifted, and we'll just share all of our selfies.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So basically these are the placeholders. So once you have your placeholders, then you can add autosave. I set up my Clip Studio Paint to save every 5 minutes because I do not trust myself. So then you add your features really simply, and then you can define the shape of your head however you want. Right, hairline here, and that is how I quick sketch heads. So that, and then also get this, the brow ridge, the zygomatic arch. Oh, let's make this actually, there we go, zygomatic arch here, the underside of the nose, the underside of the lip, there we go, chin, the underside. And so this is a real shorthand where you're understanding, okay, well, this is facing down, so this is going to be dark, and this is facing up, so this is going to be light. Okay. I hope that helps. Oh, let's get some mask back here. So that's kind of a shortcut of how to take that information and then add those like sticker kind of features on there and then place the head. I have more, I still have to keep going. So let's keep going. So there's some photo references here. When ways that you can practice this in exercising is basically just, if you draw digitally, then copy photos of people and do a trace over, like, where's it, like this one? Yeah, like I think I did it on another one, but yeah, that one here. Oh wait, no, this one here. Okay. So make sure that when you're studying, you're doing this not for a pretty picture, you're doing this to understand information. Okay, so you're taking the photos of a portrait of a head and you're drawing through the construction, you're looking for the spherical form, you're looking for the guidelines, you're wrapping your x-axis across the spherical form, you're following the y-axis from the center, from the top of the head all the way down to the chin, and you're creating all of those shapes and forms on top of the head so you can understand how those construction works. Now, it's not going to be the same as the ideal head, remember, because it's not the ideal head. Everybody's head is different, but that's the thing you want to do is practice drawing heads, breaking them down in construction. And that's basically how it will help you to understand drawing head shapes. Just a couple more here. Looking for the temporal lobe, the angle, looking for the corner of the forehead, the zygomatic arch, the corner of the chin, things like that. And all of these things are going to help you understand how to draw a portrait. Okay, and then here's one that I did with Emma, 340. I want to make sure I get this going. Okay. Oops, let's do that. Why are you not on? Oh, I don't know why that's not on. I don't know. Oh, because I turned that off. Let's turn it on. There we go. Okay, here's Emma. All right, so here's how I break down Emma. Her face is a little bit shorter and smaller, so her construction features are a little bit different from the ideal. All right, but we've got the circle for the shape of the head. We've got the thirds. Oh, here's the thing that I forgot to tell you guys. Okay, how long is the neck? Okay, remember the thirds that we added in the very beginning? You want to take that magical third, and if you take that magical third and you add it from the bottom of the chin down here, that will give you the pit of the neck. The pit of the neck is the basis of the neck. This is where your neck starts, okay? So that distance is a very important part of making sure you have the neck and how long that neck is, all right? That gives you the pit of the neck, pit of neck. Okay, right there. All righty. Then we have the 5 eyes wide and the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, that division down there. Okay, so let's keep going. I want to make sure I get everything in here today. Okay, triangle of likeness. All right, the triangle of likeness is what you need to get when you're doing a portrait so that you can capture the actual likeness of a person. And that triangle of likeness is literally, I'll show it in the next slide. It's the distance between the outer eyes and the nose. But when you're blocking in at the base of the nose, when you're doing a portrait, you always want to start off with your basic construction, blocking your large shapes first, get the cranium, the jaw shape, the neck, and the ear, collar, shoulder line, all of those things. Make your center line, get your symmetry going, and check your shapes for accuracy and placement before you start drawing eyelashes, before you start drawing those pretty little highlights in the iris. Do not, before you draw any hair on the lip, you want to make sure you get the placement of those shapes first. Okay, and I think I've got, I did that the wrong way because I have the eyes drawn and I shouldn't have drawn the eyes, but here we go. Okay, so here's a triangle of likeness. Okay, so it's the distance between the outside corner of the eye and the bottom of the nose. And that is all spatial relationships. You want to make sure that the spatial relationships between those 3 points are accurate. And same with the distance between that triangle of the outer corner of the eye and the bottom of the lip, right? That is key, right? Once you've gotten that, then you can start drawing in the features within your shapes. You're going to use your hard lines for the edges of your forms, and you're going to use soft lines or contour lines that follow the form of the planes on things like the nose bridge, the cheeks, the jawline, the forehead, things like that. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Lighting the head and understanding the planes of the head. This is really cool. I'm going to show you guys this real quick. So using this, stop share 344. Okay, let's go to, we're going to share. This is on ArtStation. Okay, screen 2, share. All righty, here we go. Move this over. Sorry, I'm just organizing my Zoom. Okay, so this is on ArtStation. This is a great reference. It's free. There's a male head and a female head. It plays and you can light the head. Okay, you can use your cursor to move the head around. You can come forward. You can come back. You can move the head around lots of different ways. But this is a great resource for using, and I think I mentioned this in my other classes before, for lighting the head and having access to a planiometric head, okay? And this is, you can see how the temporal lobe, how that cuts across down around the orbit of the eye socket, all the way down the zygomatic arch down to the chin. And you can see how this top ridge of the nose, the side bridge of the nose, the bottom of the lip, all the up and down, light, dark things that are happening with the head. So this is a great resource right here. Oh, that's not the one I wanted to look at. But if you don't copy it up there, you can access, we'll put that in the show notes or whatever. Okay, caricaturing the head. I got 15 minutes, caricature the head. Okay, let's do a new share. Oh my gosh, you guys, we're almost done. I'm gonna pass out when this is all done. I literally am. I'm just gonna fall on the floor. Okay, so caricaturing basics. All right, so caricaturing is all about shape. Okay, it's about the shapes, the spaces, and the relationships of those spaces. So the first main shape you always want to get is the shape of the head. Now, yes, we started talking about the sphere, but that's the form, that's the skeletal structure underneath. But when we're talking about the head and doing caricatures and portraits, not portraits, but caricatures and character design, you're thinking of the overall shape of the head and what that looks like. And that's what you want to be looking at. So caricature basics. All right. The next 4 shapes are those 4 shapes that I stuck as stickers onto my constructed quick sketch drawings, right? You're dealing with the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. And you can even go a step further by, why did the eyes here? But you can go a step further and think in terms of like that eye mask, right? Okay. I actually prefer to do the eye shapes first and then maybe add the eye mask later, but because these are separate shapes, okay? So when you're doing a caricature, and I have one that I'm gonna show you in a second, but what you're doing is you're looking at a person's features and you're looking at those shapes, the eyes, the nose, and mouth, not as individual features, but as actual shapes, 2-dimensional flat shapes and what they look like. And then you're looking at how far they are from each other. So you're looking at the shapes of themselves, the positive shapes, and you're looking at the relationships of the distance between those shapes, okay? Whether the eyes are close together, whether they're far apart, whether they're thin, whether they're wide, whether there's a lot of space between the top of the head and the eyes, whether there's a lot of empty space or free real estate, as Caleb was calling, and in between these areas. Those are the shapes that you're looking for when you're drawing a caricature. Now, a lot of what I know about drawing caricature comes from the book that Tom Bancroft did, and he has a really great website. Yes, Melissa knows that. And that's how I learned a lot about caricaturing. And I didn't want to pull any of his images and his references because I think that if you are interested in drawing character designs, you definitely should get his book. You can also go to his website and we'll put the link in the notes as well. But there, he goes extremely in depth, but this is like my whittled down essence of what caricature is from his book. And it's super simplified for this 2-hour workshop. But basically, and these are some examples of some characters that I did. And then actually one of my students from LCAD, Yuri, back in, oh my gosh, 2013. But what you're doing is when you're, the essence of exaggerating and caricaturing is you're looking for the most essential identifying characteristic of an individual, okay?
Looks like they froze. Okay, so we've just got about 10 minutes here. So I'm going to take over for Larissa until their signal recovers. But yeah, she's absolutely right. What you want to do is you want to figure out the overall, the most eye-catching features of the human head, and you want to be able to sort of like use your own best judgment in order to figure out exactly where those features kind of exist on a grid on their head. You kind of have to sort of break down uh, the the human head into kind of like a map, if you will. Here, I'm going to share my screen real fast so you can sort of see what I've been doing. I've been drawing along with you guys. Um, And I've been kind of doing the same sort of thing here. The idea is just you want to just take the overall shapes that you have for your more idealized heads, and you just kind of want to exaggerate what's already there. Okay, and you can do this with any angle, any um, existing, character invented angle at all that you want to. Again, it's the same rules apply. You work big to small, and you try to figure out, you try to sculpt out the likeness and every other part of the character. But you want to start with the overall shape with the most dominant features that
No,
Larissa mentioned.
I'm back. I'm sorry. I knew it was going to
No,
happen.
it's okay.
I didn't know. I was hoping it wouldn't, but it did. So, all right, but thank
All
you.
right, so I will stop sharing, but I will continue to draw alongside you so you guys can see what I'm doing.
Oh, good. Okay. So we've got like less than 8 minutes left. Okay. So think of identifying what the features are that you're going to exaggerate. Large eyes, large forehead, large hair, small or rounded nose. By putting it in words and defining it, then you are thinking how that you're identifying what it is that you exaggerate, and you're thinking of those particular shapes. And how you can exaggerate those. So another thing that's really helpful too is if you draw a average head, okay, and then you look at the person that you're caricaturing and you look at how their face differs from the average head. So this person has eyes that are further apart, or this person has more mass on the bottom of their jaw, or this person has hardly any forehead compared to the average person. You're trying to look for the differences between the portrait or the person you're drawing and the average head, and you're exaggerating and increasing the difference between those things. And that's basically what caricaturing is about. So this one, large eyes and really stylized eyelashes because she had a lot of makeup, but a smaller forehead, very, very large eyes. And you can see how the shapes of these heads are drawn really simply, and then the features are placed on top and then sculpted to follow the form. And that's really what will help when you're drawing a three-dimensional character, or trying to make it feel more three-dimensional. And then also seeing how, utilizing the linear aspect to create the tonal form, to create the zygomatic arch, the jaw, the corner of the jaw, the underside of the chin. Those things like that are going to really help to define your characters. And when you have a lineup like this, it's a lot easier to push and pull your characters because you can see the differences and the variation from everyone. I don't know, Caleb, I don't know if you've seen this one before, but this is me and this is Marshall from
Oh, yes, I have seen this.
yes, okay.
It's
So
fantastic.
good. All right, and then those are the students. All right, so let's keep going. So this is from Loomis. The basic idea is the same. You're still taking that construction, and even if you're not caricaturing it, cartooning it super simply, you can still take these ideas and push them, okay? So this is my caricature drawing here. You can see how you can even think of the face as made of rubber or Play-Doh, and you can kind of push and squish and squish and squash like you would in animation. You can squash and stretch. Okay, so here's Billy D. Williams. So my process for, thank you for your appreciation, Selena. My process for doing a caricature is always, always, always draw a likeness first, or at least try to understand what the actual likeness of the face is before I start to exaggerate. And you first construct the head, figure out what the basic shapes of the head are. Think of what the basic placement of the eyes, with the shape relationship of the eyes, the mass of the forehead, the nose, the mouth, and all of those things. Once you understand that, you can't do a caricature of someone if you don't know, if you can't make it look like them. And if you can't draw them to look like them before you start the caricature, you're not going to get a caricature at all. It's just going to be so hard because you're not going to understand what it is that you're trying to exaggerate. So it's important to understand what you're exaggerating first and then push those relationships between the things. So this is kind of my process where I start off with the basic, I understand what the shapes are, and then I kind of push and pull until I get to something that looks kind of like this. And then when I get there, I go even further and I look at just the features and I think, all right, what are the identifying characteristics of Billy D. Williams that make Billy D. Williams look like Billy D. Williams? He's got these eyebrows, the eyelids and how the eyelids are, kind of creased. And then he's got this real dark space underneath his eyebrows that shows that ridge from the brow ridge into his orbit. And then the shape of his mustache and his jawline. If I were to come in here with that jaw, I could probably, get that too, and the curly hair. So the idea is that you can, keep abstracting and abstracting until you get something that is so essential, whittled down, that that just by drawing like maybe 10 lines that this is Billy D. Williams. So it's all I'd have to do is figure out how to abstract the eyebrows, the shape of the nose, the mustache, the depth of the eyebrows, and the lips. And I will have a shorthand version of Billy D. Williams, but it's you can't get there until you understand what they look like. Our self-portrait, here we go. This is the process. Now, why do we draw self-portraits? Well, everyone's been drawing self-portraits. Masters have been doing it for years, and I want you guys to do it too. This is your exercise. If you can do this, you don't have to do it this, before Thursday, but if you can do this and then share, and it doesn't have to be like beautiful like Van Gogh or anything like that, but the idea is that you work on this based on all the information that you've got today. Okay, so what do you do first? You're going to measure, you're going to take a photo of yourself, obviously, or have someone take a photo of you. You're going to measure your features and create a planar drawing of the head. Planar is basically the constructed drawing, but you're also being mindful of your forms three-dimensionally, okay? Then what you're going to do is you're going to use your lines to describe the form and draw the features and draw the planes of your features, okay? Linearly, not with tone, but linearly, okay? Then when you get into your features and you place them in the proper place, then you can start describing the light and the shadow relationship in the eye, okay? Then start to do your hair. Define your hair first with a large mass, and then start to define smaller masses using the light and dark in the way that we did in the exercise, okay? So things to keep in mind: don't use tonal value to shade your form, but you can use tonal value to shade, to build the structure of the mass of the hair. When you use line, use it carefully to describe the contours and the changing planes of your forms, and always try to use a sharpened medium, like a pencil or something to draw with. Don't let your medium manipulate you. You want to make sure that you are manipulating your medium. You're using your tools and you're in control of your tools. Create an overall shape for the form of the hair and think silhouette to create an interesting shape. And then lastly, always be mindful of the X, Y, and Z axis, the tilt of your head, up and down direction, the left, right direction of the head, the rotation of the head. Draw your guidelines wrapping around the form accurately. Measure carefully. Measure carefully. Measure carefully, right? Because you're setting the foundation for your drawing. Now, the last thing you're going to do is once you're done doing a portrait of yourself, you're going to do a caricature of yourself. So how do you do a caricature of yourself? It's going to be a lot easier after you've done the portrait, because you're going to you already understand the shape of your head. You're going to simplify your head shapes into masses: the overall shape, the shape of your hair, the shape of your head, the shape of your neck. Okay. Then you're going to linearly draw your features, but think of them as shapes. And remember, you're going to place them on your head like stickers, and you're going to look at how you can push and pull your features. Okay. When you push and pull your features, and think of them as shapes, don't think of them as an eyes, nose, and mouth, but think of them as just shapes, because that allows you to think in terms of design. And when you think in terms of design, you'll be able to do something silly like that. So that's my caricature down at the bottom, my super fast version. I've been drawing myself lots, so I already know how to do that. But that's my caricatured version of me. So I did it. It's 4 o'clock. I did it, Caleb.